live by. I'm Pam Christian, your host of this weekly program where I seek to help us explore current events from a biblical and prophetic perspective so we, as God's children, can know how He wants us to respond. Last week's podcast was longer than I like, primarily because I wanted us to have the foundational understanding of the broader extent of what President Donald Trump is actually working on. He is actually addressing many different issues at the same time that on the surface can seem unrelated, but with a proper understanding of history, the very history the globalists have been working to prevent us from knowing for multiple decades now, we can understand the strategies of President Trump are to bring down the globalist agenda to have a one-world government by 2030. Since the globalists have been advancing their plans for over 100 years, there are many places the deep state globalists have covertly infiltrated. This is what President John F. Kennedy came to realize and was willing to oppose. That cost him his life. And nearly every president since him has been controlled by the deep state, actually working to help advance their agenda. That is, until President Donald Trump. If you didn't hear last week's podcast, I encourage you to do so to make sure you have an understanding of the background, even if you listen to it in fast speed. That's how I get through longer programs, to be sure I don't miss important content. Of the handful of nations that don't support a one-world government, the United States is the one that threatens the globalists the most. And if we step back and consider how God has been orchestrating world affairs, especially since 2016, then we can find reassurance that God is in charge, working through His selected human vessels. However, we must understand God never works against human will. He is always looking for people who want to partner with Him, to see His kingdom will done on earth as it is in heaven. For the evil that has advanced in this world to be suppressed, God's people must raise up and become involved. Let me repeat that. For the evil that has advanced in this world to be suppressed, God's people must raise up and become involved. As I've said many times, yes, God can speak something into existence anytime He wants, but most of the time, He works through His people. Today, God is looking for people who are ready to partner with Him to expose evil, bring accountability, and replace the evildoers with righteous men and women in every sector of society and culture worldwide. I was very pleased with what I heard recently watching Lara Logan's program. She's always been an excellent journalist, so it was no surprise for me to hear such journalistic integrity from her. Unlike so many so-called journalists today, she adheres to the core pillars for ethical journalism that include truth and accuracy, independence, fairness and impartiality, and accountability. If you want to add to your understanding of the history of the nations and the very real spiritual battle that seeks a one-world government, specifically under Satan and the spirit of the Antichrist, I highly recommend Lara Logan's program, Going Rogue with Lara Logan. The show I watched, she had Mel K as her guest. I've had Mel K on my program before, so I watched with great interest. Even though I've been studying our world events diligently these past 6 years, I learned a ton from these two women, which is completely understandable because I think they both have at least 20 years experience studying world events each. The program I watched is titled Infiltration Instead of Invasion, and you'll find a link in the show notes. From this video, you'll learn more about how the supranational globalist architecture established after World War II has controlled American politics, finance, and intelligence beyond democratic oversight, and how the globalists infiltrated essentially every other nation in the world. What I especially like is how they brought out that far beyond knowing how the world got into the mess it's in is the essential need for God's people to be willing to rise up and become involved to replace the evil leaders who have been enslaving the people of the world. This is the focus I want you to maintain throughout today's podcast, because as God has prophetically revealed, the time is very near for His removal of evil people from positions of leadership and influence to make room for His people to step in. I've explained before, Satan has been advancing his evil agenda for his one-world Antichrist order ahead of God's appointed time. The only way he has succeeded in this is for God's people allowing the advancement of evil. The only power able to restrain evil is that of Jesus Christ. And as history has repeatedly proven, when God's people are deceived, or worse, lured away from a proper alignment and worship of the one true God, Satan advances his evil kingdom. So, with today's program, I want to explore in overview fashion 1. Various ways God's people have actually partnered with Satan, allowing his plans to advance. 2. What we need to understand and apply to activate Christ's power against evil. And 3. Specific roles God is currently assigning to his people to restrain evil and advance God's kingdom. So I'll cover all these 3 points as I have us consider current world events that we not only need to understand, but we need to pray over. Today I'll cover Iran, the people of Iran in contrast to the government of Iran, Israel, and the United States. Starting with the first point, ways God's people have actually partnered with Satan, allowing evil to advance. As I bring out mostly in the first 2 books of my Faith to Live By book series, there are many ways the enemy gained inroads even among Christians, allowing him to advance his evil agenda unopposed. One way is through making people question and come to doubt his very existence. Another is to convince people truth is relative, personal, and subjective. I actually covered that last week. Another is to appeal to human compassion, requiring tolerance as a means of respecting points of view other than our own, then pushing the boundaries of tolerance to the extreme, demanding acceptance. This leads to both the erosion of personal boundaries and the denial of rights and safety of others. The world has largely and finally awakened to these tactics of the enemy, having experienced them long enough to realize the pain and devastation that's been caused. In fact, Karl Popper is credited for identifying what is known as the paradox of tolerance. The concept suggests that unlimited tolerance will ultimately lead to the disappearance of tolerance. For example, if groups use free speech to promote hate or advocate for the destruction of civil liberties, a truly tolerant society must draw the line to protect itself. We're actually seeing this in our culture with the growing rejection of Pride Month and transgender surgeries, among other things. Limits and boundaries exist to mark the point where good is corrupted and overcome by evil. Becoming intolerant of evil is precisely what God has been waking people up to, especially since 2016. This is why there is so much pressure for us to see the Russia-Ukraine war end, why we want to make certain Iran does not have nuclear capabilities, why we want to see the oppression of the IRGC against the Iranian people stopped, and the persecution of Christians in Nigeria stopped, and so much more. In addition to waking people up to the existence and extent of evil's advancement, God has been waking people up to the reality about the spiritual components at work in our world today. People who previously didn't believe in the existence of Satan or God are now reconsidering both. The advancement of evil, often displayed through persecution, enslavement, suffering, trauma, and oppression, always results in people seeking to be freed from such. The more evil advances, the more people seek what is good to be relieved from evil. Expansion of the Christian faith and revival has always been born of suffering. This is what we've been seeing with the people of Iran. We are hearing countless reports of millions of Muslims in Iran renouncing Islam and following Jesus Christ. One Iranian woman who escaped to Australia explained the gross oppression of the IRGC is exactly what has caused Iranians to renounce Islam. She explained the people of Iran are Christian. Only the IRGC remains Muslim. President Trump has repeatedly said any regime change in Iran must come from the Iranian people. President Trump is reported to have recently said, quote, "The Iranian people must have guns to fight," end quote. Remember, the Iran government killed over 36,000 of its own people to keep the citizens under control January 8th and 9th, 2026 alone, according to Iran International News. Clearly, Iranians need access to weapons to challenge their rulers. President Trump emphasized Iranian citizens would fight effectively if armed, but they are currently outmatched by government forces. Now, I'm of the opinion that the IRGC would never arm the people of Iran for fear of them turning against the IRGC. Ordinary Iranian citizens have never had the fundamental right to bear arms under the IRGC. Possession of civil firearms is a crime. Only specially vetted groups such as retired armed forces personnel are granted the legal right to carry guns. So, the recent reports of nightly firearms training in Iran is more than curious, and like all news specific to Iran, we're getting conflicting reports. One report through CNN, who has repeatedly pushed news against President Trump, reports Iranian authorities have set up public weapons training points across Tehran where civilians are being taught how to handle assault weapons, supposedly to prepare the citizens to fight against the United States and Israel should the war expand. Other reports claim that Iranian citizens have produced multiple videos that appear to show them holding handwritten notes and signs calling to be armed. One such sign read, quote, "People of Iran need to be armed," end quote. As one Instagram post wrote, quote, "For Iranians who have lived under decades of executions, torture, surveillance, mass arrests, internet blackouts, and live fire, this is not a symbolic appeal. It is a demand shaped by the reality of life under the regime that has made peaceful dissent dangerous and unarmed resistance brutally costly," end quote. The Islamic Republic Guard Corps has armed its proxies, which includes Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. They have fortified its security forces and dragged the Iranian people into a war they did not choose. Now, some of those people appear to be asking the world and President Trump for the means to defend themselves against the regime that has held their country hostage. I don't know what you think, but I seriously doubt the IRGC would trust its citizens to defend Iran as it is currently governed under the IRGC. We must pray for the citizens of Iran and for God's intervention in their behalf. Another source of conflicting news has to do with the repeated calls and claimed agreements to ceasefire between Iran and Israel. Recently, Iran insisted that the ceasefire must include Hezbollah in Lebanon. However, the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, was outraged that Iran would insist on that term, citing Iran has no control over Lebanon, but is instead using Lebanon as a bargaining chip. President Aoun stated Lebanon rejects being drawn into regional struggles and insists on defending its own sovereignty in national interests. He repeatedly stressed no one will negotiate on Lebanon's behalf, and the country's diplomatic track must remain separate from the United States-Iran negotiations. However, based on Iran's military strength through Hezbollah and the fact that Hezbollah operates from Lebanon under a dual arrangement as both a heavily armed non-state military actor and an entrenched political party that manages its own social services, it seems to me President Aoun's statements are essentially toothless. So I have to wonder, was it defiance against President Aoun that led Iran to send 11 ballistic missiles from the Houthis in Yemen into Israel this past Monday, June 8th? Was this their workaround, considering Iran's insistence that the ceasefire include Hezbollah in Lebanon? The Associated Press reported, quote, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels claimed an attack on Israel on Monday and said Israel-affiliated vessels would again be targeted in the Red Sea, putting the waterway as well as the Gulf of Aden and the narrow Bab el-Mandeb Strait, connecting them in danger. A spokesman for the Houthis, Brigadier General Yahya Saree, said, quote, in accordance with the principle of unified fronts and confronting enemies, and in response to the Zionist aggression against Lebanon, Iran, and Gaza, the Yemeni armed forces launched a missile barrage targeting sensitive Israeli enemy targets in the occupied Jaffa area and, thanks to Allah, achieved its objectives successfully, end quote. It's curious what their objective was, since Israel reported there was no damage from the Houthis' strike because Israel was prepared. I don't know yet, but if I were to speculate, I'd say the deep state British Empire, who is invested in Iran as part of their globalist efforts, ordered Iran to have the Houthis strike. The last thing they want is for President Trump to succeed in overpowering Iran and making it possible for the Iranian citizens to impose a regime change. And, of course, for the globalists to actually accelerate and expand the war in the Middle East plays right into their long-standing playbook of forever wars. I checked in with Amir Tsarfati from Behold Israel, who lives in Israel, to learn more from the Israeli point of view. He posted a special update regarding the war between Israel and Iran, addressing the exchange of fire between the Houthis and Israel, stating it has nothing to do with Iran. Amir posed the obvious question we all have. Why would Iran go to war with Israel over something Israel is doing in Lebanon? Before answering that, Amir explained, over the past 25 to 30 years, Hezbollah has been the military arm of the IRGC in Lebanon. One of the ways Iran expands and exports their Islamic revolution is by creating arms and exploiting existing conflict. Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon all fit the bill, so Iran trained, funded, and managed their proxies in those locations, establishing Iran as the greatest terror organization on earth. So big and so lethal that it controls the Lebanese government, police, and military. Originally under the Palestinian Liberation Organization and then the IRGC, Hezbollah became bigger than a country when it comes to capabilities. Amir explained one of the reasons Israel went to war with the United States against Iran was the proxies. At this point, Hamas is nearly defeated, and Israel has been trying to clean Lebanon of Hezbollah's 3 strongholds, so they will have no more invasion. Amir explains, the actual Lebanon military cannot clear out Hezbollah, so Israel has been doing that with the cooperation of the Lebanese government. Then, just a few days ago, Israel and Lebanon officially announced they are in agreement against cleansing out Hezbollah. In response, Iran declared, if Israel attacks Beirut once again, we will attack Israel. Israel replied, we will stay and attack only southern Lebanon. But if Hezbollah crosses the border with rockets and drones into Israel, we will strike Beirut. And that's the exact sequence of events that took place during the so-called ceasefire. Iran told Hezbollah to send missiles into Israel. And by the way, the target was civilian areas. In response, Amir said Israel struck in Beirut, but did not kill anyone, yet took out some of the important infrastructure. Following and true to their word, since Israel struck Beirut, Iran reasoned they must strike Israel, which they did with the Houthis. Now I need to insert here, it's possible Israel did kill IRGC Chief Senior Commander Ahmad Vahidi, the head of Iran's Parliamentary Revolutionary Guard and a majority player in formulating Iran's tough stance in negotiating a possible end to the war with the United States. Rumors are circulating the internet, but there has been no official Iranian confirmation, while Vahidi's whereabouts are unknown. Speculation over Vahidi's fate underscore rising risks for Iran's military elite. I wonder if either the injury or death of Vahidi is the reason Iran has not struck back. Iran has suffered loss of dozens of key IRGC leaders since last June. One report indicated Iran has lost 52 senior Iranian officials and commanders in recent years. Amir shared a post by Ambassador Michael Leiter, which stated, quote, Iran fired 11 ballistic missiles at Israel today. Each one of those missiles can level an entire neighborhood and kill hundreds. No self-respecting country in the world would tolerate such an attack, and neither will Israel. And I'll insert here, the fact the 11 missiles did no damage is because of the Iron Dome Israel has. The fact no damage was done is not a measuring point, as if no harm, no foul, and yet that's how some people seem to be responding to this. Okay, back to Leiter's post. Israel is now targeting Iranian surface-to-surface missile launch sites, as well as infrastructure facilities unrelated to the energy sector. The people of Lebanon have rejected Iran's proxy, Hezbollah, and have told Iran to get out of their country. If Hezbollah fires at Israel, its command centers in the Dahiya will be hit hard. This has nothing to do with Iran. Everyone has had enough of this maniacal Iranian regime. End quote. Amir then explained, and this is quite important, so please listen carefully. Amir said, "For months, Israel repeatedly struck the heart of Hezbollah's stronghold in Dahiyah, Beirut, with no Iranian response. Iran's sudden decision to respond now isn't about defending Lebanon. It's about exploiting Washington through two strategic goals. First is leverage. Iran wants to force leverage for better terms, major concessions, and critical sanctions relief at the negotiating table. And second, division. Iran wants to drive a strategic wedge between the U.S. and Israel by manufacturing an escalation the U.S. desperately wants to avoid." This observation makes perfect sense to me and gives us clear direction that we need to use our spiritual weapons of prayer against Iran having any leverage or creating any division for the United States, and for President Trump to be keenly aware of Iran's schemes. As of today, Tuesday, June 9th, when I'm recording this podcast, Iran has not responded to Israel's latest strike, but Israel stands prepared to defend itself against any additional attacks. Also, Israel is continuing its evacuation order for the historic southern Lebanese city's Christian quarter ahead of fresh strikes on Tyre today. Amir's observation of Iran wanting to manufacture an escalation of events with the United States seems to be borne out with reports of Iran shooting down a United States Apache helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz late Monday. President Trump vowed the United States would respond. Reports are both pilots were rescued by an American military drone boat in a first known operation of its kind. Even so, President Trump continues to report he is very close to a peace deal with Iran. I don't know, it's perplexing, and I can't help but think President Trump is playing a long game that won't make sense to us until it's over. Based on everything Amir shared, we need to be in earnest prayer for President Trump to get accurate advice that truly considers the mindset of the IRGC, the position the other Middle Eastern nations are now in, and the reality for Israel in this whole matter. I encourage you to watch the whole video because I've left a lot of the important information Amir provided out for the sake of time. NBC News reported that Iran is being faced with severe infrastructure damage from the United States and Israeli military actions, and this means Iran has engaged in the extensive efforts to dig out pre-positioned arsenals. Iran is apparently utilizing periods of ceasefire to excavate buried weapons, scattered decoys, and hidden launchers from beneath rubble to reconstitute their operational strike capabilities. Amir also spoke of Iran's heavily fortified underground network of tunnels known as missile cities across various mountainous regions that shelter existing munitions and mobile launch systems from airstrikes. I'd like to know if China, Russia, and North Korea are still supplying them with weapons and munition components. The alliance between the globalists, Marxists, and Islamists is very real, and the United States and Israel are the clear targets. Making a deal with such evil is, in my opinion, not possible. So, this actually brings me to my second point, what we need to understand to apply and activate Christ's power against evil. First, we need to note, Jesus said he has given all his followers all his authority and power. Matthew 28:18-20. God said, "No weapon formed against us will prosper." Isaiah 54:17. Jesus said, we as his followers have the ability to overcome all the plans and schemes of the enemy. Luke 10:19. Apostle John wrote, "If we pray according to God's will, it shall be done." 1 John 5:14 and 15. The Apostle Paul instructs, if we don't know what to pray in the Holy Spirit. Romans 8:26. Also see 1 Corinthians chapter 14. The Apostle Paul also wrote in Ephesians 6:10-18, quote, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people." End quote. We must not merely understand these passages from a mental perspective. We must embrace them with our spirit, being confident that each of these passages are concrete. They are certain promises from God. Stand firm also on James 5:16, which states, "The earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results." Our prayers, declarations, and decrees have the power of life and death. Life to God's promises, and death to the schemes and plans of the enemy. Use your mouth as the weapon God intends it to be to drive back the kingdom of darkness and advance God's kingdom will on earth as it is in heaven. When we pray consistent with God's will, there is no power of hell that can withstand our prayers. In addition to the Bible, God has been gracious, giving us modern-day prophecies. Since October 2025, through Julie Green alone, God has mentioned Iran 47 times. Of those times, Obama was linked repeatedly, as was China and the deep state globalist establishment, which we need to always remember is actually the globalist Marxist Islamist alliance, largely managed by what Promethean Action calls the British Empire. One prophecy Julie posted on January 12th had much to say about the Middle East, the United States, and Israel. God told us to keep our eyes on the Middle East, stating many governments will fall and many leaders removed in biblical types of events that will intensify against those nations that are against God, Israel, and the United States. God went on to name Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Kuwait, Afghanistan, Syria, Qatar, Jordan, the UAE, Bahrain, Yemen, Dubai, Saudi Arabia. God said the military secrets of these Arab nations that the establishment never wanted out will soon be revealed. Major secrets in Qatar and Afghanistan will explode everywhere. Many people will pay for the deals that were made against the United States and Israel. A well-known building will unexpectedly collapse. Pay attention to this location because many signs will be revealed that will help bring down the globalists. End quote. Then on January 18th, God said, quote, "Iran is about to make a mistake and try to make a move against the United States that will fail, but military moves in Iran will take place and their leader removed and their government will collapse. My United States stand like never before. Your enemies are trying every angle to start a civil war, to distract from attacks coming in other directions, to take out your president and your nation. The 2026 midterms are crucial to the globalists' New World Order. They will try everything in their power to steal it. They can't afford to lose. They're screaming because it's getting harder to figure out ways to come up with the votes they need to steal the midterms, so buckle up. Things are about to get bumpy and more intense in the United States. The deep state is running out of time and options, so they are willing to go for it all, even if the country turns against them." End quote. So, to close out today's podcast, we need to address the specific roles God is currently assigning his people to restrain evil and advance God's kingdom. Besides praying in all earnestness, consistent with everything I've highlighted, I ask you to seek God regarding your particular role in his plan, especially in these treacherous days and the days that will follow God's certain intervention. Prophetically, God has said he is about to intervene in the affairs of mankind in unprecedented ways. We are expecting a time of darkness when we will have no electricity, internet, and likely no cell phones. God has told us when the emergency broadcast system is activated and we are instructed to stay in our homes, to know this is God at work. We are to stay in our homes for our own protection while God administers his judgment against the unrepentant, for our own safety. I have asked you to be sure you are prepared for such a time, aware it could be 2 weeks or more. Be sure you have all on hand that you would need for such a situation. Food, water, medical supplies, baby supplies, cash in small denominations, candles and matches, transistor radio, generator, whatever you can think of. God said he will be removing corrupt men and women from positions of leadership. This means in all the 7 mountains of society: religion, government, business, family, education, arts/entertainment, and media. As Lara Logan and Mel K emphasized, it is essential God's people are ready to step into the positions God empties to use our gifts and talents to turn our neighborhoods, cities, counties, states, provinces, and nations around. I know the example I'm about to bring is specific to the United States, but I wouldn't be surprised if it hasn't gotten global media attention. I want you to consider the Los Angeles mayoral race, with Spencer Pratt stepping in to run for mayor. I love this. Just like President Trump, Spencer Pratt has no political background to bring. In fact, he does not even want to be affiliated with any political party. He just wants the chance to be obedient to Jesus and use his gifts and talents to turn evil corruption to good for the benefit of many and all for the glory of God. I know this podcast goes to many nations throughout the world, and no matter where you are needed to step into God's plan for your life and your sphere of influence for the benefit of many and all for the glory of God. God's promises to intervene with judgment and reward are for all his people worldwide. We cannot let this opportunity to be engaged with what God is doing slip by us. I, for one, don't want to be standing before Jesus one day and admit that I didn't respond to the opportunities he gave me to partner with him and change at least my sphere of influence for the better. What are you passionate about? What makes your blood boil? What injustice are you most zealous about seeing righted? That is a clear indicator of the call on your life and the direction you should pursue to apply your gifts and talents to make a kingdom difference. Until next week, I ask you to make yourself busy with the many different applications you received from today's podcast, and for you to unite yourself with Jesus and all he's asking his body of believers, his ecclesia, to do in preparation for his return. I'll be doing the same thing as I work on next week's podcast. I'm excited to announce Barry Wunsch will be joining me next week. Barry Wunsch is an amazing, well-respected modern-day prophet who is sure to have some prophetic wisdom and insights for us about the days immediately before us. Now, I ask you to please listen to my closing announcements and to take advantage of the many goods and services I bring you in an effort to at least cover the cost of this podcast. If you like what you hear from me with this podcast, I highly recommend my book series, my award-winning blog, and consider signing up for my certificate course in apologetics. My aim with that course is to help people learn how not only to use apologetics to share truth with others, but to help Christian leaders incorporate apologetics into their respective ministries so more Christians are learning how to share their faith. You can learn more by using the link in the show notes. For now, I offer my weekly podcasts, my blog, and bi-monthly e-newsletter at no cost. And certainly I have hard costs associated with doing all I do. If you've been blessed by my work and would like to help my work reach others, why not consider partnering with me? For as little as $10 a month, you can become a partner. Then together we can reach even more people for Jesus. Simply visit my Pamela Christian Ministries homepage and then click on the Give button at the top menu bar. Or if you prefer, you can go directly to the Give page using the link in the show notes. To become a partner, you can use my PayPal or Venmo account, but you will also see other ways you can support my work on that page. Whether you choose to become a monthly partner, give a one-time donation, purchase my books and products from my web store, or support my affiliate sponsors, anything you can do to help me continue this work would be greatly appreciated. And as always, your prayers and telling others about me and my ministry work is much needed. When it comes to my selection of affiliate sponsors, I first look for Christian-owned and operated businesses, and I make a point of personally using the products or services so I can fully endorse them. I seek sponsors that offer products or services you can get via the internet worldwide, and I specifically consider what is common to most people universally. So you'll find health, beauty, and wellness products through Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements and from QE Strong. Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements are truly amazing and are available to my listeners for a 5% discount per purchase or a 10% discount for a monthly subscription using the promo code FTLB. You may have heard my interview with Rob Renee about QE Strong. Discover the benefits of quantum energy to overcome all sorts of ailments. Visit QEstrong.com and use the promo code FTLB at checkout to receive your discount. Then my newest affiliate I'm really excited to bring you is Q Streaming. That's CUE Streaming Television. People with United States addresses can get over 3,000 channels, including live TV with streaming television without a contract. Get all of your local networks and favorite movie and sports and pay-per-view channels for about half of what cable costs. See the video promo link in the show notes to learn more. Affiliate sponsors only provide financial support to me when you purchase what they offer. So before you support Amazon or any other retailer, if I offer what you're looking for, please purchase through me. When it comes to special occasions, birthdays, or Christmas gifts, consider my books, jewelry, CDs, and more from my web store or any of the affiliate goods and services I offer. When you purchase from my web store, be sure to use the promo code TRUTH, TRUTH, to receive a 20% discount. Again, you'll find all the links in the show notes. If you like the content and resource material I bring you with this podcast, you'll find much more by connecting with me through my blog. In fact, my blog has been awarded 2 unsolicited awards for Christian content. And I'm also very active on social media. I can cover much more on social media than I can with this weekly podcast. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to my complimentary bi-monthly e-newsletter. I offer encouragement, special offers, and one of my signature recipes with each and every edition. Yep, I'm a foodie and I love to entertain, which is why Faith, Family, Friends, and Food is a bonus segment of my bi-monthly e-newsletter. To receive even more, please be sure to check out my dedicated podcast listeners page, Beyond the Podcast. Here's where we can connect exclusively and you can download complimentary devotionals, resources, and more. On that page, I also ask you to help me learn more about you and what you want by completing the form visible once you scroll down that page. And something that is very easy for you to do and would mean a lot to me is for you to rate, subscribe, or comment on this podcast according to what your preferred listening platform allows. You know how it works. The more likes and subscriptions to this podcast, the more opportunity we have to expand the listening audience. And that means we can reach more people with the gospel message of Jesus while helping people learn how to better apply their Christian faith. I hope you'll join me next week and tell your friends and family to listen right here on Faith to Live By, where we learn how to gain spiritual victory over life's issues. Until next week, I'm Pam Christian, asking you to remember Christ died for us. The least we can do is live for Him.